is Ksenia Ryuma and I'm data architect with DataStax. By following along this video step by step, we're going to experience and build Astra streaming in action. Looking at this data ecosystem data pipeline, we're going to replicate real-life scenario as, imagine we have stock exchange company, and that company collects variety of stock exchanges that have been made at a certain point of time. It might be stock, Tesla, Google, and towards the end, we want to analyze if, let's say, Apple stock will go up or down. In order to do so, at least we need to apply some filtering, some maybe aggregation to extract the data to make it clean and filtered so we can apply the further logic. Usually to execute this pipeline, some companies or individuals can pick many tools, and today we're going to consider the tools that have been provided to us from DataStax using Astra database and Astra streaming. We're choosing those tools for the reason as instead of bring variety of resources and trying to figure out how to integrate them together, Astra platform gives us capabilities of storing data at rest, at Astra database, that high velocity database that able to store high volume of information. And it also provides capabilities of storing different data types, maybe documents, maybe text files, blobs, and so on and so on. Astra platform also gives us capability to make the streaming available. What does that? Why does that matter? Because we not only want to process the data that's been stored at rest, we want to make sure that all new data points that comes in to our rest point can be pushed and executed in the real time to produce real-time scenario and result. We're going to use all this list of capabilities. If some of them are not familiar to you, don't worry, we'll step in and discover them together. Most of the steps that we're going to follow, they're more or less intuitive, and let's explore. On this slide, you can see the same architecture, what we're going to build, and here beneath you can see the steps that we're going to follow through. You can find those steps in this GitHub repo, and so if you can see all the steps, file source, you can realign and see where you are on the building blocks part. Next, just to prepare you, usually at least I find it extremely helpful to see the bigger picture, what we're building before we'll start executing all the steps through the repo. Don't be scared or don't be overwhelmed looking at what's happening behind the scene. This is the same architecture, just being more executed or shown how this data going to flow from one point to another. What you can see here is we'll create Astra database through our Astra platform. We'll spin up Astra streaming where we'll create the namespaces and topics. So the topics is going to be a part where we're going to push the information, and the further topics we're going to use to collect the aggregated or filtered data, applying functions that we're going to explore also together. Those functions will give a capability to extract the end result. What we want to get is the Apple stock. Meanwhile, we also apply the sync. So sync capabilities on the platform will help us to bring this data to REST point, Astra database, and bringing CDC, change data capturing part will be able to add additional segregations. And as a result, I'll show you how to build the integrations that also been built in the platform to bring ElasticSearch in motion. And now this is the part to build. First, we'll need to go to the repo and prepare our workstation. Here you find the prerequisites and you need to install. We'll start with Java. I'm running Java 19 point something, and that demo works on later versions of Java. At least it should be 11. Then we'll use Pulsar. Just follow this link, install it, and put it in a folder where you also need to clone that repo. We'll create ElasticSearch account. You can use cloud, and we're going to apply it a little bit later as we reach the point of integration. And you also will need to create, if you don't have, Astra platform. Once you install those, we can come back to the ElasticSearch as we reach this point. So what's happening on the setup? In the setup, we'll need to create our Pulsar tenant and namespace. If you go to your UI of Astra, we'll be able to see the option to create database and streaming. On the left-hand side, you'll see the streaming. Click there, and we'll see the button to create a tenant. In my case, I already provision one. You can put the same name, maybe so it will be easier to follow along. After clicking the button to create, you'll see similar environment. The way you spin up your namespace, go to namespace, click create namespace, put the name, and first, let's look back. We need to create stock namespace and create first topic stock in. This is where we're going to push and store initially our files of the stock. We created stocks namespace, and here you can add topic, which you can call stock in. Once it's done, we need to set up connection between our Pulsar and Astra platform. In order to do so, once you go to, we need to find the client conf file. Its location is on your tenant side. So if you go to back to your streaming, it's located down here. You just download it, and we need to place it in the setup which you downloaded your Pulsar files. Let me show you where it's been located. Let's remind it. So it's in a conf directory. Here you can see the files that we cloned from the repo, and those functions we're going to use just a little bit later, and files that we're going to push being also provided to us as CSV format. This is a Pulsar that we downloaded, and I allocated this Pulsar file and newly cloned repo in the same directory. This is how the client conf looks like. You can open it, and later when we'll start working in the producer, as that is one part of the make the streaming available, we create consumers and producer, you'll need to use this token for authentication. We'll run those producers and consumers locally on your machine, and before doing that, we need to place that conf file in the conf directory. Once it's done, you can save. After the step is being finished, you can read descriptions how we're going to use Pulsar CLI. We'll run these commands for consumer producers from Pulsar and min directory. Here are the steps how to create Pulsar stream. Let me show you the steps how to make it happen. I will skip these parts. Once you put your client conf in a certain directory, you can run these commands where you put the name of a tenant. As an example, in our case, our tenant calls Pulsar demo, to verify whether your connection from your Pulsar CLI is being made successfully to Astra UI. We have done that, and when you run those commands on your terminal from the bin directory, you'll see at least the response on your consumer side as what you can see on the screen. Let's start from a file source step. If you recall our diagram, we are at this location at that point. At first, we need to create directory, temporary stocks. You can change directory to temporary and create your stocks folder. That's where we're going to drop our CSV file with stocks. Then you download your file connector and place it to your connectors directory where your Pulsar is located. So here we place it, and you'll need to locate the path to the SNAR, change your Pulsar path where you have this folder. The token, you find it in the client conf folders that we downloaded from our Astra streaming part. You copy this whole path and insert it in this location. Make sure you change the name of your tenant. In our case, it's Pulse Demo. This is going to be our destination point for the for the files that we are going to pick up from the file. And this is a config files that allows us to bring this CSV files to our Astra platform. If you ask why we're storing them in a temporary stock directory, here you can change input directory if you decide to execute maybe for your own reasons or some different type of scenario. Once that's completed, in my case, I stored it. You'll need to open a few terminals to run the producer and consumers locally. You need to go to your Pulsar file and go to your bin directory. Once you're there, so this is my path where the Pulsar are located. You might see some warning signs. Usually it comes from different version of Java. Don't worry about it, it's normal. So it seems like everything is working. What we're going to do next is we'll copy stock price file and drop it to the temporary directory. we copy this and insert it to our temporary directory. Soon after, you'll see that file will disappear as it's been already picked up. Now let's see how this file has been picked up by a consumer. We're going to the same bin directory and run consumer. And we see that consumer picked up our messages. That shows the results that our setup is ready for the next step. Just before we continue to the next step, make sure you check your stock-in topic and verify that data being populated. So you'll see a dashboard being updated. As the next step, we'll add function to our logic. So what does it mean? You can build your custom code which will be applied to each message in your topic. In our case, is stock-in. The function we're going to use called add UID to stock function, and it will convert messages to a Java object, add IUIDs, and then publish messages as a JSON schema. The custom code we're going to use you can find in a recently cloned file, and that is the logic that we'll use. After running maven clean install through your GitHub project, you'll see your jar file being populated. Once it's ready, we can go to namespace, add the new topic, add topic, call it stocks enriched. And the way you can create function, so in our case, I already have one running. As an input, we're choosing stock in topic, and the output stocks enriched. And stock enriched topic will contain all these messages coming from stock in with certain logic. You can create a function by clicking create function. You select stocks, next, you upload your file, and you'll be able to select the function that we're going to use. Next, the input is stock in, and the output where we want to store our updated data is going to be stock enriched. You leave those parameters unchanged and then click create. You'll need to wait for a little bit while the function is going to be added. What's happening behind the scene? We completed this step prior when we saw the stock in data being populated, and now we created enrich function which is going to store the data in stock enriched part. How we're going to verify that everything works as expected is we're running the same producer. Just don't close this page. And in order to be able to get this, consume the messages from stock enriched topic, you'll need to update the pointer from stock in to stock enriched and run the consumer. It is running, and what we're going to do next, we need to get our file and drop it again to our temporary folder. See if it's been picked up. It is. Let's verify on terminal, and we see that message has been populated or consumed. Let's go to Astra and see and check that our data get enriched. Congratulations, we're almost halfway through. Now let's store data in Astra database. We'll go to Astra database UI, spin up new database on GCP in US Central 1 region. Go to create database, fill in the parts that been asked, make sure you use suggested region and create database. Once it's been provisioned, you can go to SQL console and start creating your table. Once it's done, we need to create sync. The sync part will help us to get the enriched data and store it at rest. Where you can find sync? Go to Streaming tab and select the tenant, pick sync. This is the ones that I'm already using and running. That is how it looks, and that part is really helpful, the logs, so you can debug it if something's working not as expected. You create sync and populate the information. Let's call it. We'll connect the topic stock enriched. Pick the database that's been just provisioned. Once you provision database, you'll be able to you've been given credentials. Make sure you store this token, or if you didn't store this file, you can create the new token with organization administrator role. You leave just before we actually continue, so you put the demo as a key space, table name. You can find this information as what we've seen in repo, and don't forget to use mapping. We need to change the mapping from default, so our messages will be successfully stored and synced from enriched topic in Astra database. Once it's ready, you can leave the rest as default and click Create button. Once it's done, we can verify if this thing is working. What we want to do is, again, copy our stock prices CSV file, store it in temporary stocks directory, and hopefully see how this data is going to be populated in our newly created database. Let's verify that part of the step and see how the data being populated in our database with the help of sync. Go to database, SQL console, and select the records from our stock table. Stocks, 20, and we see that information being stored as we expected. Now let's use change data capture, and Astra database CDC enables or gives you a way to capture data and push it upstream or downstream information real time. So we'll enable Astra CDC on our database to record all this newly captured data at real time. First, we'll go to our database and select CDC, enable your CDC. By enabling it, just giving a little bit time, what you'll see by going on your streaming tab, the Astra CDC namespace will appear with 2 log and data topics. Let's verify that information from Astra database been captured by CDC tool. We need to change our consumer to data topics that been provided to us or generated automatically through CDC. You will need to just copy it from UI and insert it. So by doing so, we will see our consumer get the messages in. You can also verify it through by going to data topic and see that your dashboard also been updated. Next, we'll add stock filter function that will help us to consume data from CDC and ingest it to different topics. If you recall, our CDC data contains variety of stocks, and what you want to do, you want to filter and store the data in the new topics. The way this function works, or what it shows, once you add the logic and set up the function will reproduce or push the data automatically in newly created topics as what's been based on the logic. Looking and finding files, filter stock by tickets in your GitHub directory, you'll need to update the URLs that will point to the topics that you just created. Once it's done, save the file, and we need to compile the class that will update our jar file. And once it's done, make sure you added all this newly topic to namespace. And by the way where you can find the URL, by opening the tab, you can find the URL. The function as an end result going to look like what you can see on the screen, and in a similar fashion you add the function by selecting the fields, the jar file, add the logic. We want to consume data that's been captured by our Astra CDC, and output will select stock default. Even though we're not adding the Apple and Google stock as a topic, we'll see after making the consumer being available, we'll see how the data going to be populated in those Google and Apple topics. So once you're done, wait while your function will be ready to be executed, and let's start our consumers, update the endpoint to those topics We'll run them. You can see some messages being populated as I've been already inserting some of them. If nothing being picked up from your side, copy CSV file, push it, and later on you'll see that the message is being consumed. To verify the data being executed, you can go to those topics and see your dashboard being updated. What we have done, at this point, we created filter function that on the logic pushes the data automatically by providing the filter on the label Apple and Google. As a next step, we're going to create integration with external tool Elastic and see how we can bring the data from Astra platform to external resource. In order to build the Elastic Sync integration, we need to spin up our Elastic Cloud account by going or following the link or just Googling ElasticSearch. Get your account ready, and we'll need to find ElasticSearch URL and Kibana URL in order to enable the thing to bring the data to Elastic. You can find those URLs at the tab, what you've seen in the screen. Make sure once you create your account, you can download your default credentials, usually username as what it appears called Elastic, and you'll be given credentials. You'll need to use them while we're creating this thing. Copy ElasticSearch and Kibana URL, and we'll use them just in a second. If you happen to don't store your default credentials, you can go to the tab security. That's going to be your username, and by clicking on reset password, you're going to be given the path that we're going to insert building sync. Once those credentials have been gathered, we can go to Astra UI and start building the sync. We already know where the sync is located. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And we want to bring the stock related to Apple. And again, we are selecting the namespace stock, picking integration, where we want to get our data in. Input is stock Apple, and by following the instructions, you place your ElasticSearch URL, you pick any index name of your choice. You insert as username the password for your ElasticSearch. In our case, it's Elastic. Insert your password. You can keep talking on the API key. Then disable strip null, enable schema, and then enable copy field key fields. One is done, you can create it and make your thing functional. Once it's going to be provisioned and active, you can go and see through the logs if that connection being made successfully. And after verification, we want to see or verify that information being captured by our Elastic Cloud. Cloud data being populated by selecting deployment name. We're going to be redirected to Elastic dashboards. Go to ElasticSearch, select indices, and providing the same name for indexes, what you've been putting in while you're creating sync, and selecting document tab, we'll be able to see this Apple stock is being ingested to Elastic. This is the end of our demo, and today we've seen Astra streaming in action. Thank you for your attention and have an amazing day.